This is a very pivotal week for Bitcoin and crypto, and there is no better guest that I would like to have joining us than Paul from Definity to look at the macro price pressures affecting crypto, as well as a look at Bitcoin, ETH, and then a look at some viewer picks from last week's video with both some price analysis and fundamental analysis. Today, we'll look at Solend, Umbrella, Fidira, Chronicle, Sidus, Spores, Osmosis, Form, Wanchain, as well as what is going on in the crypto market. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money in crypto and you're looking for a real investor take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note, neither myself nor Paul are financial advisors. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many, many markets. Special shout out to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. Make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Let's welcome Paul from Definity.
Hi, guys. Yeah, it's a very important week. You said pivotal at the top of the show. It's definitely a pivotal week. We've got a Fed announcement today, this evening. Yes. By the time, well, I say today, it's Wednesday, but this goes out on Thursday. So you'll be the other side of that announcement. We'll see whether the markets have surged up or down or gone down in disappointment. But we shall see. But definitely the market's very, very interesting at this point.
Yes, our Patreon members do get access to it Wednesday now. We made that change recently, so they'll be able to watch this on Wednesday, but the show will go live on Thursday. Cool. Exciting week. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. Could be positive, could be negative. I'm really looking forward to your analysis as well. Do you mind if we go through some of the things on your mind and what price pressures you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think generally speaking, I'm trying to stay on the positive side, not because I just particularly want to be positive, but I think that there are signs that the markets have turned. So let's go with that until proven otherwise. There's definitely enough bears out there for everybody. So let's I like to be contrary and go on the other side. But whether we're talking about the beginning of a massive rally is unclear at this point, but we could be, this could be the start of something really big. And as they say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We're going to start with a few single steps, as it were. So what I'm looking at, obviously, we're going to be talking about the US dollar. So let's look at what's happened to the US dollar. It's come off this 108, 109 area, and it's starting to turn down. That's a good sign. But as you see, the last few days, it's catching a little bid. That could be because the market, as we speak, is waiting to see what the Fed's going to do. So you probably don't want to be short US dollars knowing that the Fed are going to raise interest rates. But it's really what happens after that. And the market is not looking at today. It's looking at September, October, and towards the end of the year. And with that regard, I think we spoke about it last week, but there's been a lot of commodities that have just completely collapsed in price. Let me just find those for you. So we've got so for example, we've got things like soybeans, sugar, wheat. That soy futures gone back up, but look at this chart of wheat, which has collapsed. So there's a lot of soft commodities that have gone down. We've also seen a collapse in the base metal prices as well, which has been usually a good indication for a recession. So this is a chart of copper, which is known as the metal with a PhD because it normally predicts of the economy. And so that's come off a massive amount. And so this is demand destruction. So the Fed will have to respond to this one way or another. So whether they're going to respond to it, now or later, if they raise interest rates, the markets will say, okay, you're going to have to undo that, buddy, because there are problems out there. Mm-hmm. And so this is the chart of lumber, which is a good indicator for the US property market, house builders, because a lot of houses in America are built using wood. So when this goes down or consolidates, it's usually an indication that that demand is going down. Now, I don't follow the US property market, so I couldn't tell you. Everything seems expensive everywhere, and I'm sure that's exactly the same for you guys. But if we look at the US 10-year yields, which I think is finishing up on the macro stuff, this is one of the most important charts for me because this is making a topping pattern, which means that 10-year yields could drop by as much as 70 basis points or could perhaps even come back towards 2%. So it's 2.7% at the moment, 2.8. And this was a head and shoulders reversal pattern that we've been tracking for the last few weeks. We talked about it on the show, and it's completing this pattern with a break of this neckline, which is around 280. So it's hovering around there. Again, there's a good reason for that because the Fed are announcing today, but a break lower, which is what I'm expecting, would encourage a little bit more risk on trading. And that includes Bitcoin, that includes the S&P, includes NASDAQ and technology stocks. So it could be that, yes, we are at a very pivotal point. And so we're going to have to see into Thursday, Friday, how the market reacts and whether these technical patterns continue to play out.
Question, could it be the case that the Fed raises interest rates and still have that drop?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, usually the sort of knee-jerk reaction to an announcement is in the opposite direction of where the market eventually settles on. So, for example, if the Fed raise and they say, oh, we're going to raise more, and the market gets the feeling that they want to sell, they normally sell immediately. But if you think of it this way, the longer-term players are anticipating a little panic, a mini panic. So what we want to see is once the shenanigans straight after the announcement comes out, we wait to see, a few hours later, maybe the next day, to really see what the market wants to do. So trading right on the numbers, usually not a good idea. Right on the announcements, not a good idea. But it can be very contrary. So something like them raising and being very bullish or hawkish on rates, the market can react completely in the opposite way. As we saw, last week, the announcement on Celsius didn't really seem to affect the cryptocurrency markets very much. In fact, they were quite bullish, and this is a sign that this is a good sign when the market stops reacting to so-called fundamentals. Because as with the best will in the world, the people who run the economies and from politicians to central banks, they also are party to politics, and the market knows that. So the market knows sometimes they've got to talk a book and they may not do what they say they're going to do. So in reality, the market reads between the lines and says, okay, you're saying you're going to do that, but we don't believe you. And so that's the sort of thing you've got to look out for. So taking what is said ultimately by rote is not really the way to approach the market. It's we have to look at all the circumstances. So we know that the data they're going to look at is going to be showing high inflation because everything's been going up. But we also know that everything's come down very aggressively. I mean, I showed you some quick charts. We've got so many charts to look at this week. I didn't want to spend too long on them. But so we know
indicators that cause inflation, like price of wheat, price of soybeans, all those things, the prices are starting to come down.
Yeah. I mean, sugar is one of the main components of practically everything, isn't it? It's everywhere. And that's coming down. And so, if this is the case, then there will be some easing of inflation, whether it's transitory or not, I don't know. But there will be some easing. The market will react to it. So, oil prices might be going back up because gas prices are going up. So that's still a little bit of a concern. So energy prices are staying stubbornly high and could actually go much higher. But raising interest rates when the economy is actually falling potentially into recession and moving sort of backwards is something that the Fed might not want to do. And especially how strong the dollar's been. That's a double whammy, treble whammy, again, that we've mentioned on the show. So these things are like the brick and the elastic band analogy that, again, we talked about. You can pull on the elastic band with a brick on the end and nothing will happen and nothing will happen. And then you keep pulling and pulling and then suddenly it snaps. And this is what happens in the markets. Nothing happens for a while. And then it's that one last sort of, big figure in the dollar index that causes, companies to fail or profits to look bad or whatever it might be, that has that domino effect that then makes it so that they have to react to it. So it's a real problem that they've got because they printed so much money in the first place. So it's a really difficult problem to solve. And I'm not saying that it's an easy one, but it started with printing printing loads of money, which is, you know, inflationary and not a good idea in the first place.
Agreed. So the Fed is weighing all these price pressures, meaning, well, they want to raise interest rates to curb inflation, but they're seeing the indicators that that's already possibly going to start coming down, as well as businesses are tanking. Demand is being destroyed, which is part of what's bringing all those commodity prices down, right? And so if they keep raising the rates too high, they're going to push the U.S. and therefore other countries into a recession or a deeper recession. And they're weighing all that. So the market's suggesting that if they do raise rates, it's not going to be very much, because the market's pretty bullish. Well, I don't know how to say that, but they're thinking that if they do raise rates, it's not going to be much, is what you're saying.
Well, what they're thinking is they might not raise rates as much into September, October, November than the market thinks at the moment. So if they raise more now, they might have to actually raise less then, when they predicted they'd be raising by 50 basis points or 100 basis points, which is another way of saying 0.5% or 1%. They might actually not move when they projected that they would move. So that then becomes a bullish outcome, because the market had actually sort of factored in higher rates. So what they do now is less important, I feel, because a lot of it is factored in already, than compared to what they are going to do further down the line. So three to 6 months time. So I mean, the job of the Fed is it's like having a party where, and the old analogy of a punch bowl, where their job is to keep the party flowing. And at the moment, the party's been waning. And in the past, they've already sort of spiked the punch bowl and brought all sorts of other things in to make people stay at the party. And that can cause problems, which it does, because you get excessive speculation. But the problem is they still have to do more to keep the party going. And it could look like they want to talk a good game by saying, you know, we don't want this to get out of hand. We're going to have to take some measures to calm the market down a bit, because inflation's going up. But at the same time, you know, people are leaving the party and saying, oh, this is not working. So they're following this sort of very delicate balance of trying to keep the economy from going into recession and being competitive on a global stage, but actually sort of reining in inflation, which can get out of control if you don't, if you're not careful. So it's a very difficult line to navigate. And as I say, the problem is that all the policy responses for basically forever has been just to print money, and that's dangerous. That's why Bitcoin exists.
Politicians love that, because then they can give it to their donors, right? And so, like in the US, you know, both parties love it. One party really, really loves it, and the other party's like, hey, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it too. I heard there's another like big $1 trillion spending bill being worked on that all the Democrats are behind, and a bunch of the Republicans. Boy, they do not need to be writing $1 trillion bills right now. You know, in fact, they need to put the brakes on some of the spending they've already allocated. But
well, that's the thing. You have the debt ceiling. You may have heard of this, and they have the debt ceiling, and they hit the debt ceiling, and they say everything's going to shut down, and then they have a meeting and then just raise the debt ceiling. So it's a bit like having a stop loss, and you know, the market gets near your stop loss and go, actually, I'm just going to move the stop loss, and it's so it basically doesn't exist. So
great analogy.
You know,
stop loss. Don't worry, we have a stop loss. You get to let's change the stop loss.
Let's just change it. Yeah. So what ceiling? It's not a ceiling, is it? If you keep moving it, it's not a ceiling at all.
It's the most flexible ceiling in history.
Yeah, it's not a ceiling. It's a pause where they stop and chat and then move it again. But it's a problem. It is a problem because, of course, they need money. So they're in this cycle. And, you know, if you want to study Austrian economics, they say that this eventually ends in hyperinflation and a destruction of a currency.
It does.
Which is why it's important to look at other things, which
like Bitcoin.
And precious metals and things like that. Just anything that's kind of not fiat currency. But as I say, that's why Bitcoin was supposedly created. I mean, people have different theories as to who created it and why it was created and all this stuff. And in the end, it exists. It's a tool. And it's there. It's not going away. And I think you've got to look at it in terms of what it can do for you, rather than
specifically, it's a hedge against that and the fiat going to zero, right? It can be a monetary system that the government has no direct control over. So they can't just print money. They would have to actually earn it. They would only be able to spend if Bitcoin became the currency for, say, the US, Canada, and some other place. They would have to spend only what they took in, which politicians hate. But because then they have to, but wouldn't we all love to have a credit card that we could just spend into the future, right? Because that's essentially what politicians have. And that's, my feeling on why Bitcoin was created, why Satoshi during 2008, when they were doing all these bailouts and stuff. I mean, him and other people were already working on this, but a system that could replace currency. I think Bitcoin's still not there because the transaction costs, it could be there soon. It's more a replacement, or it's a hedge against fiat going to zero, but it has better properties like gold than it does a currency. Because when the network gets busy, your transaction fees could be $10 or $20 or $30 on Bitcoin, which you can't buy a coffee with a $10 transaction fee.
Yeah, absolutely. But I listened to a very interesting podcast with Joe Rogan. I think it's with Mark Stevenson, and he's sort of an older guy who's been involved in tech, was involved in the internet in the very early days. Very early days. We're talking probably 70s, that sort of time, and 80s. And he said some really interesting things, which I think is worth listening to. I mean, he said all tech at the very beginning gets shunned by the mainstream, and it was the same with the internet. It was the same with lots of different technologies, and it's the same with cryptocurrencies. It just gets shunned for a very long time, and then all of a sudden it gets embraced. And I thought it was, although that wasn't a new thought, it was just interesting the way he looked at it. And of course, nobody's got a crystal ball, as you've said before, but it is, I think the question is there an existential risk to it? Will it completely disappear? And I can't see that happening, because it is a new technology. And so my view is it has to have some form of longevity, even if it transitions into something else. Or we're seeing companies creating new things even on this show. I mean, it's just so interesting to see what ideas are coming out there. Look, they might not all work, but this is still, it's a frontier. It's a new frontier. So the mainstream might not get it, but they will get it, because these developers wouldn't be wasting their time with something like this unless there was something in it. And the internet, they didn't know what it would be for. They had no idea. And
it kind of evolved into this amazing thing we have now. But before, it was to allow universities to talk to each other.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. They just thought you were crazy if you thought the internet would be useful for anything else. It was amazing, and he talks about that, which is, so again, it's worth listening to just to hear him say.
Joe Rogan is probably the greatest podcaster out there of all time. I'll have to find that.
I do enjoy listening to him. It's great to have people who are so good at what they do discussing topics like this in a way that we can understand them.
Completely. Well, do you mind if we take a look over the Bitcoin chart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Over so we can take a look.
Sure. So, okay. So update if there's any new people coming on the show, or just to put things into context, we have been operating from this downward trend, looking for signs of a reversal. We got a panic down on this Saturday on the 18th of June when the market hit a low and then rebounded. But it hung around for a while before it actually changed trend, which is not normally what it would do on a major low. It would normally go up and rally very quickly, but it went sideways, and there's all sorts of bearish news that's coming out about Elon Musk selling all his Bitcoin and other things, other bearish news, and Bitcoin is still higher than that low, which I think is very interesting. Now, it managed a fairly decent impulsive rally and got to this medium-term moving average, which you can see it stopped, and it's come back again and is now sort of back into this range. But this overall is developing into an upward trend. If it can rally from here, you'll see that this is going to start moving into perhaps a bit of acceleration. Now, the prize, the target is this trend line. This is the main trend line that's been operating since April. And if it can break through that, then we are starting to cook with a bit of gas, as it were. So that's my next target. I want to see that level go. Now, if I may just quickly look at Ethereum, just to show you that this actually gave a much cleaner breakout signal when it was a bit more equivocal and we weren't sure where things were going. So this has come down. It hit 1280. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was 1280. That's right. 1280 resistance. Came down again, hit 1280 resistance again, came down again. We were looking for a break of 1280 to indicate that this had reversed. And it went through it very, very cleanly. And this seems to be kind of running with the ball at the moment. This seems to be leading the way. So I'm more focused on Ethereum right now, because if this starts to weaken, then if it's leading the way, I'd be more concerned about Bitcoin falling. So whilst this is looking punchy and looking like it wants to go up, I'm kind of happy with the broader picture. So at the moment, this is looking good. It's had a nice rally. It's consolidating. Risk off traders maybe squaring positions ahead of the Fed announcement, and then we'll see what they do straight afterwards. It's not out of the woods by a long way, but this is a fairly decent rally, nice little correction. The prize here is a clean break of this downward trend line. It's gone through it and come down again. But where I see the big barrier is this 1718 level, which was massive support. We saw that on the way down, and when it went, it literally fell out of bed and down the stairs, as we say. So so it's coming back, and that will be a big barrier for the market on the way up. So what we need to do is, it may not break it on a first touch basis. Look, it may not get to it. Who knows? But as long as it's over 1280, for me, I'm going to stay in a bullish frame of mind. And we can even, I'll actually put this on now, we can even draw this as an emerging bullish trend line. So this is the line now that we could be operating from, that indicates that the market is going up. And it's been a long time since we've been able to actually draw an upward trend line or talk about any completed reversals. But that's where I sit. As long as that line is in effect, I'm going to maintain a bias to the upside.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's been nothing but getting savaged on the way down. And so it's nice to see things turning around. Although, I mean, this time when things are really cheap is the amazing go time. It's an amazing time for people that are dollar cost averaging in. I think they're going to be really happy with how that works out for them. So it's like bottoms, they suck to be in on the side of if you're already invested a lot, but they're a fantastic place to be to put more money in at the bottom, right? If people could rewind time back to the last crypto winter and buy Cardano at 2 cents and 3 cents, that's what it felt like. And what sucked about that time is probably you might have started buying Cardano somewhere at 20 cents and then 12 cents and 10 cents and then 7 cents, not realizing it'd go all the way down to 1.7 cents. But then all those purchases you feel pretty good about when it goes all the way to $3 and above. And even when it later reverses and comes down all the way to 40 cents, you're still up. So what I love about crypto is on many of the good projects, even from a low point to the next low point, like 2 or 3 years later, it's usually that low point is a lot higher.
Yeah. I mean, what's happening here is we're getting a shakeout of, the projects that clearly aren't going to work and aren't, where the people aren't really that serious about them or have made catastrophic errors. And that's, beginning of the internet and the NASDAQ stocks and all the .com stocks. That's exactly the same thing happened there, where you had so many companies going for this gold rush and then a massive correction that just cleared everybody out who wasn't serious. And then it, it can consolidate for a long time and then it starts to move back up again. And we see the emergent technologies. So there is a reason for it. The strong markets will manage to weather the storm of higher rates, and good projects will sort of see off the bad ones. So, but it is a difficult time. There's no doubt about it, and it's not clear whether we are completely out of the woods. So, we may be talking about new lows at some point. Nobody can guarantee this stuff. but we just have to look at how the evidence starts to unfold and whether overall it looks more bullish than bearish. So some of the altcoins have been doing really well. I mean, if we look at, Matic was one that I think we may have mentioned last week, but this really has looked extremely bullish. But I think somebody's asked for Solana, and Solana by comparison. So if we look at what's going on here, so Matic's gone all the way back to this trend line. It's looking very interesting, like this is properly recovering and going into the beginning of a new trend that could well take us back up to this 280 level. And I'm not going to say that's a done deal, because of course nothing is, but I think over sort of 63 cents, which is where the breakout point was, I'm going to maintain a positive view. But if we look at Solana, which was, the darling of cryptocurrencies at one point, it's still very compressed, and it's a bit like Bitcoin. It's not really moving as much, but at least it's not going down. So this is consolidating. So what I think we need to see, broadly speaking, is I think we do need to see Bitcoin play catch up. So the majors playing catch up and move into more aggressive trends. And then I think we're going to swing back into the altcoins, where they will then, the ones that haven't moved will play catch up. So the market kind of moves in waves. So that's what I'm expecting to see. But obviously I'm going to look for evidence that I'm wrong.
Yeah. I my feeling on this is that we're either at or near the bottom, right? So one of our Discord members, our Patreon members get access to in Discord, we were talking, and he said, so are you saying that we're not going to have a lower low? And I said, because I released a video the other day on some indicators that we're at or near the bottom, and that it doesn't mean we can't go to 15,000 on Bitcoin and that altcoins can't hit lower lows. It just means that we're at or near the bottom, is what the indicators are telling us. So it just gives you probabilities. That doesn't mean things can't switch around and go way, way, way lower, but probabilities state that we're at or near the bottom.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, there is definitely a reversal in Ethereum, and there are definitely some altcoins that are trending up. There is definitely some easing of yield pressure in the US 10-year bond yields. Commodity prices have definitely come lower. So one would anticipate for there to be more risk on trades. Now, whether this lasts a week, a month, to the end of the year or beyond is another matter. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But we can only call what we see. You can only trade what's in front of you. And at the moment, I think that's a fair call. I'm not looking for a break to 14,700 in Bitcoin. But if things start to unravel, yeah, I'll have to sort of respect what the market does. That's what technical analysis is about. We don't tell the market what it's going to do; it tells us. And there's plenty of technicians who are calling the market lower. There's lots of bearish people out there, and they might be right. But I just think this is good. What I consider to be risk reward. If you're wrong, then the sort of exit points aren't that far away. But if you're right, and you're in at these points, you could be riding it for a long time. So that to me is what the market's about, is risk against reward.
Exactly. Let's dive into some, speaking of risk and reward, some of these altcoins that are suggestions from last week's video. So if you have some suggestions you want us to look at next week, put up to 2 of them in the comment section below, not in the chat, but the actual comments themselves. Especially tell us what you're thinking, why you're thinking about those, and want us to look at them. Let's start off with Solend. So Solend is a lending platform on Solana, and like all the other altcoins, it's been punished tremendously.
Yeah, so this I'm sure we've talked about before, and
Yes.
it has come down quite some way, but it's also rebounded really nicely. So we've got what's called a V low. So it's hit its low. I wouldn't have been buying it here. But I am attracted to this rally, this sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 day rally, and it's consolidated off that. Now this could be moving into potentially a head and shoulders. So it might come back down to this sort of area here at around 60 cents, then go back up again and complete a larger reversal pattern. But I'd say that this is bullish while it stays above 60 cents. If it breaks 60 cents, then, you know, that's an exit point, and I'd have to rethink it. I'd rather it be I'd rather buy trigger it through like 74 cents, because then it would tell me it's made a low and then it's gone back up again. Because of course, I don't know when we're going to talk about this next. So I'm trying to think of a few sort of chess moves ahead. But this is interesting. This is if this unravels and goes all the way back down, it will be very disappointing, because it does look like it's trying to reverse this longer term trend. So, you know, for those of you that have stuck in with it, this personally, I wouldn't have done. I'd be honest with you. I'd be waiting for a sign that it's reversing, but that's because, again, I don't look at the fundamentals, so I don't know what's great about it and why I should hold it for the longer term. But there's certainly some evidence of good buying here and potentially a larger reversal. So I think this is a buy as long as it stays over 60 cents.
Yeah, looking at, I'm going to share my screen. Looking over at CoinMarketCap on Solend, some things that I like about it. Now, this is a higher level project with some of the most, the best backers in the industry, including Coinbase's venture capital arm, right? So they have some really good, well-connected backers behind it, and that makes a difference. And its market cap has come all the way down to 14.5 million. If all the tokens were in circulation, this is what the fully diluted market cap would be, is 68 million, which for a project like this, that is a very attractive market cap, in my opinion. And it's extremely attractive at this price. And you just showed kind of what it's doing. It's a sign that maybe it's turning around. In fact, the probability is that probably it is. But we'll have to see. It might touch back down to that 16-cent line. Or what was that? Not 16 cents.
It's 60 cents.
Yeah, the 60-cent line. And it'd be an important decision point if it touches down on that, whether it breaks back up or breaks down. So I'm liking what I'm seeing with Solend. For me, this is a buy. It's a real good buy. Again, it's 60 cents watching it, but I like to buy and then just a hold for longer terms. Even if I don't time the bottom, I'm okay with that. What's your analysis on this? Is this a wait? Is this a sell? Or is this a buy?
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought it's, yeah. I for me, I think it's a buy as long as it holds over 60 cents. So yeah, I mean, this is a speculative buy, as it were, because you know, there may be other things that are running higher and have completed more sort of structurally sound bases. But you know, I think if everything's turning and I'm in a bullish mood, then why not? It's done what it needs to do for this first phase. But as I say, if it gives up 60, I just wouldn't be happy. I'd feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't mind selling it below 60 and then buying it back again over 72, because that for me would protect it going much, much lower.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably it's going to come back down a little bit from this run. And I wouldn't be surprised if it touches 60 cents. I do think probably if the general market continues up, it breaks up from there. But one of the risks I see with this chart is I don't see a lot of like roundness at the bottom, right? So there might be some ongoing price pressures from vesting. One of the things I liked about this, the vesting schedule that I saw, showed that the lockup on the pre-sale investors and stuff was very, very long. So I just don't understand what tokens would be vesting. But as well as the market coming down, it seems like there's some kind of vesting price pressures on this. And that's just the short-term risk. Medium-term and long-term, that vesting will stop and the price will do well, is my guess on this. That's why I hold a bunch already. Let's take a look over at Umbrella.
Yeah. So the Umbrella Network, which was one that we had a look at a very long time ago. It was back here, if you remember. So there was this inverse head and shoulders pattern and the market went up. So that was a decent trend, but then it broke back below the neckline, which was a bad sign, and it's been in a downward trend ever since. So this is really going through the wars. I'll say straight off that this is definitely a wait for me, so I wouldn't be buying it. But it has respected this support level at 16 cents on 3 occasions. So it's 1, 2, 3 that seems to be holding on onto. So if it can get back through this 23 cents, then I think it will have formed a base, and it would be a good enough pivotal point to have broken to imply a bit more upside. And I'd feel more comfortable that it's created a base. Now, there will be some people looking to buy it against this support level, and it may well hold. That could be a good place to buy. I personally wouldn't be doing that because I look much more longer term rather than just a couple of days worth of a trade. But if it breaks this level, which is why I'm concerned about it and why I'm saying wait, then unfortunately it would mean that we're going to see a bit more downside just because it's such a key point. But in terms of the broader market, it has underperformed. So this is one I'd put in the camp. If Bitcoin starts surging again, and this hasn't moved for a couple of days, I might come back and have a look at it and think, well, okay, the sort of bias is tipping much more towards the positive side. I'm going to start looking at things that haven't moved yet, and this would be an ideal candidate. So this is more contingent on the big picture moving higher and this being a catch-up play. But at the moment, I'd have to wait.
Yeah, I like this one. It's a competitor to Chainlink fundamentally. And let me share some fundamentals on it that I like about it. Number one, the market cap is really, really small, 1.3 million. Now, this tells us that only about 25% of the tokens, even less, are in circulation. So that if all the tokens were in circulation, then our market cap would be at 9 million at essentially at this price. We made a ton of money in this channel on this one. We got some information that they were going to be doing a large marketing campaign as well as a lot of rollouts and stuff. And so I covered it in depth when it was about 21 cents and then took a nice ride up on this. The marketing campaign was like a month long. And so it did push a lot of awareness on the project and the price rose. And I told everyone I was taking profits on it on the way up and getting my initial back out. So I didn't take any of that ride down. And so I'm happy to take another position on this. So for you, it's definitely a wait right now, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a wait for me. Needs to do a bit more work.
Yeah, for me, it's a wait as well. I like this one, but I just want to hear from the team fundamentally. So I just put a note in my planner to invite the team back onto the channel. Just what I like to do when I start to get really interested in their price of a project is see if I can get the team to come join us and talk about what's going on, kind of as a health check, right? Because one of the downsides of investing in alts is that sometimes the projects do fail. They just run out of capital and they fail. So if you think of yourself, if you're a crypto investor, especially if you're investing in altcoins, think of yourself as a venture capitalist. And that's kind of the right frame of mind. Some of these projects will fail. That's why a check on the fundamentals of the health will help you on the fundamental side. Paul, a lot of times, can see it reflected in the price of those fundamental investors like us start seeing, oh my gosh, project's going to do really good, and then the price will start going up, which then Paul, without even hearing the actual fundamentals, will see that reflected in the price. All right.
And and that would mean that I wouldn't buy the lows. So where where you may be buying and adding to your position, you'd be getting it at much better levels. So I'd be buying it sort of much higher up. But that's, for me, the price you pay for a little bit of kind of safety for not getting caught in something. You have to do that when you trade technically, because if you don't have any fundamental information to tell you to get out, you need something to tell you to get out. And that can only be a price level. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Let's take a look at SHOPX. And we haven't discussed SHOPX in a little while. And they've come down to a really, really low price.
Yeah. So just check that this is the right one, because
split. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a similar chart, really, to Umbrella, in the sense that it's trading very near its low. It hasn't really enjoyed much of a recent rally, and it needs to play catch up. It dropped below the shelf support here, which is at 5 cents. It hit its low, made a V low, which was good, but it's come back to another support. Had a very small rally. This is telling us nothing really around this most recent price action. It's not changed the bullish or the bearish sort of information that's going on. So I'd have to say, broadly speaking, unless it can get back over this 6 cents level, I'd be waiting. Now, a short-term trigger, you could get a short-term buy trigger through like 4.5 cents. So a breakthrough here with everything else running higher. Again, if we put this in the category that it may be playing catch up, if everything else is moving nicely to the upside, then I think 4.5 would be a good sort of trigger level to say, okay, let's watch this more carefully, because we might want to buy it on a break higher through 6 cents, or even if you're feeling speculative, buying it a little bit early. There's a double-edged sword there. If things are turning down, this may well lead the way downwards, because this is looking quite heavy. So this is definitely a pivotal week for it and for the market in general. So we should really revisit it. But at the moment, based on what we can see right here, it'd have to be a wait.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, it's a wait as well. I'm just seeing if I'm checking. So I have coin market caps numbers here, and there's some difference in what they're saying. So coin market cap is saying the market cap is 942,000 versus a fully diluted market cap that would suggest only 8% of the token is in supply, and that would be really, really low percentage. So on CoinGecko, they're saying the circulating supply is still only about 18%, which is still a pretty low amount. Obviously, this will probably come up when the rest of the market does, but for me, there's just options I like better at the timing that I have lots of this. I'm not going to put more in this with the chart looking like this. So, yeah. For me, that's a wait as well. So for you, that was a wait.
Yeah.
And yeah. Perfect. Let's check out the next one.
Right.
Cryowar.
Cryowar. Right. Let's see if this works. Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. I'd like to know what they do. Sounds like a game, but I'll wait for you to enlighten me. Price action wise, it's percentage terms moved quite a lot off the low. But it looks like, I mean, look, it's been basing here for a little while, hasn't it? It's been going sideways since June, when everything else was sort of going lower. And this looks like it's forming a base to me, although it's very subtle. But if I just draw the line that I'm looking at for a head and shoulders reversal. So if we draw a line across here like this, then this could be a left shoulder. This is the head, this area here, and we're just forming the right shoulder. So if we can take out, what's this, 3 cents, then that would be a short-term buy. But look where that trigger point is. It's right where the previous low was as well, like this really significant sort of massive collapse low. So again, that doubles up how important that level is, because, of course, if it can recover a level where people panicked into, then this would raise the chance of this being a important low or a reversal pattern. So I'd have to say wait for now, because it hasn't done it yet. But a break of sort of 0.036 to be precise, because every little part of the cent matters on prices when they're this low, would be interesting. Now, I'd have to put a parachute level in there as well, as to say where one would get out, like where the pattern could potentially be negated, and it'd be 0.029. So if it breaks this line here, then that's where I'd think perhaps things are going wrong, and it might be heading towards a new low. But this is interesting.
Yes, with the down market, it's crazy. Well, this has gotten extremely attractive. Now, I wasn't able to get this at the IDO. I didn't get it in the pre-sale, but I'm interested in the project. It's fairly simplistic type of game to develop. It can get to the market faster. There's plenty of room for this type of genre. It's kind of like a top-down. I don't even know quite what it's called, but I played a game like this during the bear market to see the dynamics and how it worked. And so I like it. There's not a lot of competition for this area that they're going for. They'll be able to have a fully developed game much faster than some of the large scale games. And so when it came out, I was looking at what the IDO price was, and it's amazing how things come right back down to the initial price. So the initial exchange offering was at 2.8 cents, and the IDO was at 2.8 cents on Seedify. And it looks like pre-sale was a little bit cheaper at 1.8 cents and seed at 1.4. So we're just barely above those prices. So that's exciting. Now, those people who got the IDO made a killing if they took some profits, but now it's come back down here and it starts to get really attractive again. So this is a wait and watch very closely. I like it, especially with where it is right now. I'm going to go back to your chart because it's a little bit better. But yeah, this I might make an entry in this. I don't own any, but now close to now might be the time for me.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Let's jump over to Fidira.
Yeah. So Fidira. Right. Let's see if we get something on this. Okay. So again, it's a basing market. So we've got this downward trend, very clear downward trend. And I think the chance it had to go downwards would have been here, like at this point here, because this would have looked like a descending triangle. So the bears would have been out for it, like really gunning for it to go down, and it didn't. It just went straight back up again. Now it's come back into this area here, but what I like about markets that go sideways for a while is that the longer it does that, the greater the kind of platform it's building for the next rally. So although it's close to the previous low, the major low on the chart, if it can go sideways for a bit and then back up again and take out this prior resistance at 0.008 cents, then that is my tripwire to buying it, because that would look like a double bottom pattern. It would have broken a downward trend line as well, because going sideways, it has to have done that, even if it doesn't go up. So there'll be two technical reasons for me to be looking at the upside. So at the moment, I have to say wait, but when it comes to an actual trigger level, like a really good buy trigger level, potentially through this point here at 0.0085 would be very interesting. Now, obviously, if it takes the low out, I mean, I'm not saying this is a buy now anyway, but if it trades back through this low, that's not a good sign at all. And it would imply, another down leg. Now, we wouldn't want to see something like this, but it's certainly possible. And I'd have to leave that option open. But I'd like to be a bit more optimistic than pessimistic on this, and hope that it turns around and breaks this resistance. But I would want to see concrete evidence before actually buying it, though.
Yeah, there's something really interesting happening with Fidira and their price. So it's come down to these lows, right? So the previous highs were all the way up at like 62 cents when initially launched. And now it's down to almost half a cent. Look at this, what the seed price was. The seed price was almost 10x of where the price is now. So you have people bailing out at this at a huge loss, even if you were a seed round investor. Now, possibly what's happening is some of these development tokens and marketing referrals and partnerships and farming and future growth, or maybe some of this development is being sold in order to provide funding to do stuff, and sold at very, very cheap prices. So this is one for me to buy more. I really would need to see the health. Now, from here, what's great is, I mean, the market cap is so low. The fully diluted market cap is 682,000, and I own a bunch of Fidira. In fact, I even bought some more not too long ago, just a little bit, right? So it's definitely a risky bet. It's not something I would put tens of thousands in this price. If I put any more in at this price without checking on the health of the company, it would be in the realm of $100 to $200. Just with this kind of low market cap, though, if it does flip around and survive, that it can do tremendous. But it's definitely at a risky point when the tokens are being sold for almost 1/10 of the seed price, meaning that somebody is selling and refusing to hold on this. And maybe they know some things that I don't know, or maybe they're just impatient, right? So which of the two, I don't know what it is, but that's definitely a red flag to me. And I like Fidira and I like the team, but that doesn't mean that they're going to survive. I'll reach out to them and see if I can get an idea of how healthy they are. Cool. So for me, that's definitely a wait. And for you, that's a wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Let's take a look over at Chronicle. This has some interesting things happening to it.
Yeah, I was just checking it out as you were speaking, and so I've put in XNL, which is the code, and I've got this chart which looks to be up to date until closer examination. We've got up to the 25th of July.
25th of July. Interesting.
Yeah. So why it would stop just a couple of days short, I'm not really sure. So should I go over to CoinGecko or something like that, or is that because I had
it pretty much just stayed in the same vein where it's been trading, so I'm not sure why.
Yeah. Okay. If you've got an up to date
in the same pattern, I'm looking at CoinMarketCap.
Yeah,
it's just trading in the same pattern, so that's so crazy that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I mean, barring anything sort of large that's happened, you're saying if it's around the same price?
Yeah, it's at 3.3 cents right now.
Okay. So what I'm seeing here that's a little of a concern is I don't like these very sharp wicks, as you would call them, or spikes. Now, they're not reversal patterns per se, but it just tells me that the data is a bit spiky. Now, does that mean that the market is being traded in a illiquid way, or is it just the data? And it could be either, and I don't know the answer to that. And this happens sometimes with a market that is very thinly traded or very small in its market cap. So that would be my first question, because when I'm looking for a breakout level, so let's say I want it to break this 6 cents point, if it does something like this, just sort of spikes through it and then comes all the way back down, then that doesn't give me confidence that it's properly broken that level. So that's why I'm slightly more concerned when I see this sort of spiky price action. Now, on the positive side, it is in a range consolidating, and it may be forming some form of base. But unfortunately, there isn't enough evidence to show that it has completed a base, and it does need to do quite a lot more work before I'd feel comfortable saying it's a buy. So this is definitely a wait for now. If we draw in this main downward trend, ideally this is where the problem comes in with spikes. Is that a real price that we draw our trend line against, or do we have to say that the other prices are more significant and therefore we draw the line from there? Now, I always draw it from the price action that's shown, when there's doubt, I just have to assume that this is correct price action. So that makes it slightly more it gives a bit more of a safety margin that it needs to break before I turn bullish, which is, what I would suggest to do when something is, thinly traded like this. So there's the downward trend. It needs to break that before I turn bullish, or certainly needs to break over this 6 cents level. So for the moment, it seems to be in a consolidation phase.
I'm finding a little bit better data. XNL USDT on KuCoin. So this is traded on KuCoin, and so I'm finding that chart has a little bit better data.
Yeah.
It still has some spikiness, but that is where the majority of trading is happening for this one.
Yeah, I don't think it will change the chart, too much. It's just where I may be drawing lines from. But the headline is it's still in this downward trend. It has consolidated since kind of like the middle of May to date, which is a positive sign. But it hasn't really moved into what would we call an impulsive trend conclusively as yet. So we need a bit more evidence that this is changing its trend before issuing a sort of positive outlook for it. So it's a wait. It's got to be a wait for now.
Yeah, makes sense. For me, it's a wait too, just to see what's going on with it. I mean, I really like the price that it's at. I'll share. Got it pulled up on CoinMarketCap here, and I like this kind of market cap. And so I think of everything as like a venture capitalist investor. And say you diversify your investment across 10. Now, I'm diversified these days across about 300 different projects, maybe even more. And so, but let's just use the number 10 because it's an easier number. And say as a venture capitalist that 5 of your investments fail completely, but 2 of them do over 100x, and say 3 of them do about 20x. Your overall return on investment is still really high. You've outperformed the S&P 500 by leaps and bounds. In fact, you're not up in the percentages. You're up in the like X numbers up on your portfolio, which your average might be 20 or 30 or 40x, even with losing half of them completely going under. And that's why I like the risky stuff like this. I like overall 20 or 30 or 40x returns, even when like up to half of them might fail. So market cap's at $700,000, fully diluted market cap at 3.3 million. I do have an interview with the founders of Chronicle from many, many months back. You can find, if you go to videos on the channel and look that up, you'll be able to find it. For me, it's a wait at this price. I do own some that I'm just sitting on, and I'm happy to wait. I'm not seeing anything that's the little bit of money I have on the side that I'm going to throw into things. I'm not throwing it into this at these prices yet. Right, let's take a look over at, we have lots of suggestions. So we have a few more. Let's look at Sidus.
Yeah, so Sidus, this is right. I'm just wanted to see if I could get a slightly more up-to-date chart because we got 1 day missing on this. It's nearly there.
So weird that it's doing that.
Yeah. So this looks like to be the most up-to-date chart. Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so that is up to date. So my mistake. Yeah, so this is an interesting chart. This is one that I would definitely be watching very closely because it looks like this downward trend has come to an end, and it's forming the beginnings of a fledgling sort of new bullish trend. So why do we say that? Well, because it's gone sideways for so long, because it's trading within a rectangle formation. Now, I would like to see it breaking through this 2.3 cents level. If it can break through 2.3 cents, I would feel better about buying it because it would then show that this is sort of first wave, second wave, then third wave of a new bullish trend. So where it is now, it's correcting, and obviously it could just correct back into this range and just sort of circle around there for a while and not do very much, and you just be sitting and waiting for your plane to take off and it's not taking off. So that can be frustrating. So I would like to jump on something when it's moving. But as for the structure of the chart, I like the fact that it's been going sideways and it's been consolidating in this way, because it's in line with what the broader market's doing. And in percentage terms, of course, that's a very decent rally. It's just it hasn't made much impact on the overall trend because it's been downwards for so long. So again, it's got to be a wait, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that when we come back to these same markets in a few weeks' time, they'll all have turned from waits into buys. I can't guarantee that, but these are the levels where I'm thinking, well, where I would be saying, yeah, that's a buy through point 2.3 cents. You can see why. It's key resistance here, key resistance here. Now we've got a bit of resistance up ahead at nearly 3 cents. So obviously it may just get that far and then stop. But if it can get beyond that, then we're talking about a much bigger phase of a rally. So a few steps ahead as to what it needs to do. But for the moment, it's a wait. But I really appreciate seeing this. So thank you for showing it to us.
Yeah, great suggestion by an audience member. We interviewed Sidus recently, Dan, who I met at NFT NYC, and invited him to come on the channel and explain kind of what's going on with them. They have a really interesting metric, Paul, in that you can take the tokens and you can invest them in modules being built in the game. Then as those modules make money, they're going to be sharing a percentage of the revenues with those that invested in building it in the game.
Okay.
And so I invested in some things. In fact, if maybe I can even pull that up, and I bought a bunch of tokens, actually what turns out to be at the low there. Let's see. And it wants me to change to the Ethereum network to connect. Let's see if I can connect and show these modules. If not, like the interview with them really shows a lot. So there we go. So this is the game, and these are some of the characters that I have. These are NFTs, and they're upgradable. You can get little weapons and stuff for them to have, and the game's very much at a basic form now. It's going to be a lot more in-depth. But in the modules, you can take those tokens that you built, and you see I have some of their Sidus tokens, some of their Senate. I have a lot less than I bought because I've been going down to these modules. So the scholarship module is... scholarships are very much a big part of games and play to earn games that require some investment cost in order to make, I guess, more efficient use of your time. And so it leverages people that have a lot of time. People that have money lend some items to those that have time. So I invested some in this module, and you can see that I've invested so far 0.041% of the total amount contributed. And so what I can do here is I can go in here and I can invest. It'll only limits me how much Senate coin I can invest per day. And I invest, and you'll see this number change up. And so the Sidus coin, in fact, that's going to take almost the rest of the Sidus I have, and I want to put that in the shipyard. So module, so I want to invest the max, will let me here, and the max will let me here. So my total percentage is a small percentage overall, and we'll see. This is very much a risky move. If this game ends up being around for 20 years or 30 or 40 years, and these get a lot of usage, like the shipyard, and I don't even understand what mechanisms, but my guess is it is a space game, so they will have ships. And so if that ends up being a very profitable module for the game, then that'll be profitable revenue share over time. Very, very interesting model. I'm excited with what they're doing, but it's still early days. And so there is some pressure on the price related to that. And so it's interesting. I bought some, even though it ended up being at the low of this, but I bought it for use in investment in the game. I'm looking for an entry point to pick up more, just that I'll just end up holding.
Cool. I was just looking at that thinking, for God's sake, don't show that to my son, because he'll just be wanting to invest in it and play the game. And so it looks really cool. So yeah, great.
Cool. Let's take a look over at Spores Network, which the price has become abysmally low. And sometimes that's a fantastic investment point, and sometimes it's still a wait point.
Ooh,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
that's another one that's not updated. So thankfully, that's not what it looks like now. Is it? Let's try this one. So yeah, I think this is looking like it's up to date. No, it's 13th of July. So I think we're going to have to.
CoinGecko has a better chart than
let's see if it's on Spores. Let's see if we can get something on here.
That's
Would that be, that gives Spores net
yeah.
return?
Well, that chart looks accurate.
Yeah, let's go with that. Actually, this is interesting. So short term, we've got we look at how this RSI has been turning up as the price has been turning down, which is interesting because it's showing a convergence. It's showing that there's slowing of the downward trend and some buying. But even though this is very flat, let's take that off auto. I've got to zoom in here just to really show you what's going on. What I'm looking for. What I like to see is what's called a symmetry in the price action. So we've got, if we have this is the center point, then what's going on the left can be repeated on what's going on in the right. So we've got this really strong resistance point here at the level that you can see on the screen, because I'm not going to call out all the zeros. And this looks like an inverse head and shoulders potentially. And it's been chopped back at this level so many times. So 1, 2, 3 times, and close here as well. And we got the moving average coming in. So if it can come up to this level and break it, then I think this is a good short-term buy with a stop loss where the level I'm showing you here now. Obviously, that's pretty close to the low anyway. So one could say if it takes out a new low, then that's it. Just get out of the position. But that's how I would read it technically. I like the fact that it's forming this base. It doesn't look particularly significant because the trend has been so negative. But this is the thing about reversal patterns. They do take a bit of time to form. And usually when people have got bored of it and don't want to hold it anymore, and they've already kind of like bailed out their position, and then you get this kickoff move that starts the new trend. So I'd be anticipating that first impulsive breakout that takes this resistance point out and starts the new trend. So unfortunately, it's a wait, but it's in the camp of one that we've got to look at in a couple of weeks' time to see whether it's turned around with everything else.
Well, I'm just jumping in. I'm going to message the team and just check on the health of this and make sure they're still alive. Because if so, I'm going to buy some more. I have a bunch. I have I have $1.5 million of this, which at the current price isn't worth a whole lot. But at this market cap, if their health is still good, then I will be buying some more. So I guess this is a conditional buy. I'm going to reach out and see if they're still alive and ticking and working forward with their stuff. If so, an exceptional buy level for me. Let me share this. Like right now, their market cap is $500,000. With their fully diluted market cap, at $1 million, just over $1 million at this price. So for me, that's strongly attractive. It was up at 10 cents before. If it goes to half that even, I mean, the returns on this will be tremendous. Cool. So, yeah, I like this one. Let's take a look at our, for you, this was a wait, Paul?
It was a wait, yeah, because it hasn't completed the reversal pattern as yet. So I'd have to wait.
Perfect. Let's jump over to Osmosis.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another one where we're seeing a potential base. I mean, it's trying to move higher. We've got this downward trend, which has obviously been dominant for some time now. But around the middle of June, it hit its low. And here we are, sort of end of July, and it's not made new lows. So the rate at which it's moving up is not very aggressive. So that's sort of something that we put in the you got to be cautious camp. But it has made a double bottom, which triggered here, and which is a really good sign. It came back below it, which is not great. We'd expect it to stay above this line. Remember that chart of Ethereum and how it broke that 1280 level and it just went straight through it, and it hasn't come back anywhere near it. This is what we'd like to see, but it's still trying to rally. It's trying to move higher. So in terms of this price action, I think it's encouraging, and we could draw in a tentative fledgling upward trend line at this point and say, look, we'll stay bullish and by bullish I mean sort of 60% bullish against 40% bearish, so a weighted sort of bias to the upside, as long as it stays over this line here. Now if this holds and it breaks this level here, which is just over $1.03, that is massive resistance. You see how it held there and how it stopped this rally here. So if it can get through this point, then I would say that 60% goes to 70-75% bullish, and we could then draw a trend line that goes from here to here. So you see that would show us that this trend is now accelerating and it's operating from this line. So for the moment, I'm just going to be slightly cautious and say I'm going to wait, but I do like it. I do think it's looking interesting here. And it's, again, I think it's contingent on everything else moving up. If it can break through this dollar level, that would be a really good sign for it. But it has been in the spacing phase for some time now. So it is ready to produce a decent rally. If it's going to do it, it's like now or never. If it doesn't do it now, then I don't know when it's going to do it.
Okay, so your final analysis on this?
I'm still going to wait. I'm just going to be a little bit cautious here because of this big resistance at $1. But if it gets through there, then I'll be changing that to a buy.
I can't say I know what's going on with Osmosis. I haven't ever talked to the team. They have very interesting price pattern. So 2021, they did, they absolutely, well, so they came out in 2021 here. And then in January, like what's interesting is they started doing good when nobody else was doing good. And really peaked right here in March when everything else was way down. Now, notice that they've had this big increase in volume here, and that brought the price way, way down. And then a lot of the volume fall off here. And I just don't know what's going on here, what's caused this. On a fundamental side, I feel completely blind. And so I wonder if, because this is about 7 months after the project token became tradable, that maybe the token vesting started, and there were a whole bunch of tokens that went into the pre-sale investors' hands, and that then started driving the price lower. And if it just started here, that means it's probably going to continue. So for me, this is a wait. But Paul's watching the right things. So because if I'm right and there's token vesting going, happening with what Paul was saying, then probably is going to break to the downside. If there isn't more token vesting, then it might then break to the upside. So for me, this is also a wait. But fundamentally, I have no idea what's going on other than it is, let me show the website. So Interchain Liquidity Lab built on Cosmos, and that's probably why it did well. Cosmos was doing pretty well during that same time frame, and then like everything, it kind of falls out of narrative. So cool. Let's take a look at our next one, which is Formation Finance.
Yeah. So I had a quick look on the normal charts here, and
there we go. Formation -5. That one's Formosa. Is it something?
Formation -5. Okay, yeah. So that's that one. Okay, so this unfortunately is, well, I mean, it's definitely not a buy, as you can probably see. It's a straight line down without any form of consolidation. So let me just quickly compare the other chart. You see how this was in a downward trend. Now it's made a base and it's trying to move higher. So I can work with that, but I can't work with something that's just a straight downward trend. So we need to see some evidence. Now I'm expecting, perhaps this was asked for because it had made this candle here, and therefore it moved quite aggressively in percentage terms, and it could have been the start of a base. Could still be, but looks like there was quite a lot of volume going on there. But in the end, it's still really not done very much to turn this trend around. So I'd have to say, definitely for me, this is a wait. But hopefully, if it can stay around current levels for a few weeks, maybe a month or so, then it may have done enough work to create a base from which it can start to trend higher. But in terms of probability, I'd have to stay out of this for now.
Yeah, I'm not liking the way the chart looks, and unfortunately, I hold a lot of this. I've liked the team. I haven't spoken to them in a while. This is one that before I buy more, other than maybe $100 or $200 worth, I would need to speak with the team, just see what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, that chart doesn't show any signs of rounding, which I generally look for. I think the IDO price and stuff was around 2 cents. So it is trading significantly lower than even initial prices. Now, they did have some really generous staking rewards at like 80%. And so, if people got those and then they staked their IDO tokens for a long time, then, essentially their average price is cheaper. But when it's trading almost 1/10 of the IDO price, it's definitely a concern. Especially with what we're seeing in the charts. That's the charts of something that could go to zero. Now, they don't always go to zero. If you look at Ecomi's charts during the last crypto winter, the price was trading significantly below the IDO price and even below like pre-sale prices and everything. So this doesn't mean that the company is going to go away, but somebody still continues to sell even at these very, very low prices. And that's a concern. Maybe they know something that we don't. So for me, this is definitely a wait.
Right. Okay. So was there one more? Did you want to look at
one? Look at Wanchain.
Right. So Wanchain. Just checking that that's not up to date. Yeah. That looks like it is up to date. Yep, that's up to date. So yeah, so this is interesting again, because it looks like it's forming this inverse head and shoulders potentially. So if I just zoom in and show you what's going on here, so this could be the left shoulder. This whole area here is the head. This is the right shoulder formation. So we've got the beginning of the right shoulder. So it could come down to this sort of level here, around sort of 19 cents, maybe a little bit lower, but not too much lower. And then it needs to turn around and then move up again. And if it can do that, we've got resistance here at 25 cents that's matched on this side. So remember, we're going back to that symmetry. What's happened on the left could be happening on the right. So then we get this reversal. So we want to see a strong rally through that resistance point to indicate a base. So the fact that it's going sideways is kind of phase one of a potential base. Phase two is that it starts to accelerate on the upside. So that next part is what we're waiting for. So you probably guessed I've got to wait here for now, but I do like the look of the chart. This is something that could resolve within the next week, perhaps even quicker than that. But it may take a bit longer as well. So we've got to give it some time to reverse. But we should know very quickly whether this is going to turn around or not. So it definitely is at an interesting point in time right now. If just one final technical thing I'd like to just draw here, and that is this fledgling upward trend line. So if one was in a really speculative mood, one could buy it now and then put a stop below this trend line, because the risk reward would be relatively good. If it breaks it, okay, the loss is small, but if it holds it and it's turning into something more substantial, then it would work at that point. The only downside to that is it isn't actually rallying aggressively, and it hasn't broken or completed its reversal. So there's a greater chance that it will fail at this point. And so one would normally wait a bit longer for it to have completed a base before jumping in. So, but yeah, it's really interesting where we are.
Yeah, I just traded into some more of this morning. At 20 cents. I'm happy with this price. We can see way back in the history, there was one point that it was below this during the bear market, and I did buy some around there, and it was ranging between 10 to 12 cents. So we're not quite back to those lows, but we're really low. And so I just traded into a little bit more this morning. I have significant holdings of Wanchain, and I'm a big believer and they are a strategic partner of the channel. I really like their tech people. They're very smart in what they're doing. They just released some major tech upgrades in the last month. So yeah, I hold a lot of this that I've been holding for a long time and continue to hold for long term. And that wraps it up. If you have something you want us to include next week, put it in the comments section below, up to 2 of them. And especially if you can tell us why you want us to look at it. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your analysis.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the picks. They're really great.
Yeah, those are really good picks by the viewers for us to look at. Now, remember, the crypto market is slow right now, and just know that good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market turns around. This wrap is for all of you to reinforce the principles that I share that make a difference in high returns. Thanks, everyone.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I'll sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. The mate's worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.